Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, Red Laughlin here. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, all y'all. This is just another wonderful day here in paradise. I'm in the Houston, Texas area, but today we're on the USA Global TV and Radio Network and on the E360 TV network. We're starting a new series. I was looking around as to saying what really makes a lot of sense that our audience, it's a true worldwide audience, what would be something of immense interest. We've talked about Alzheimer's, we talked about weight, we talked about fat, we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about pain, we've talked about a number of other topics. I'll kind of summarize those up at the end. But just looking around and saying, well, what kind of trends, what's out there? And I said, well, you know something? Why not just talk about the current topics and trends that are permeating 2023 as a major concern? So let me get my slides lined up here, get the first slide on up and into the system. There we go. Move it on over. So we're going to talk about hot topics and trends. First off, as a disclaimer, I'm a researcher, not a doctor, never associated with the pharmaceutical industry. I fell in love with chemistry long before I met my wife of 55 years. I had chemistry as a sophomore in high school, decided right then and there that was going to be my major. I got a degree in it. Also, at the same time, I got an invitation to Vietnam, so I never got a chance to practice chemistry as a chemist in that field. But nowadays, thanks to my wife's breast cancer, I ended up doing a little bit more chemistry related items. I started looking as to what can I do as a caregiver to help my wife get through her chemo, drugs, and everything else that was going on. So I look at the human body at the cellular level, and I look for cause and effect relationships from a chemical perspective. Things happen. So if I'm looking at causes and I can treat causes, I probably can make a dent in something. But if all I'm doing is putting a Band-Aid on a symptom, all I'm doing is changing Band-Aids. I'm never actually fixing the problem or making it get better. Now, when we look at health and wellness, I totally believe that our health and our wellness is our responsibility. Not our parents, not our doctors, not our pharmacists, it's ours. And as such, awareness, education is a ground level for being able to make more intelligent decisions, ask better questions when you're at your doctor's. And so this presentation is primarily for education. We'll be mentioning several things in here, and don't just jump out and go do something. Think about it, do some research on it, and then, like I say, ask an intelligent question to your doctor. So let's talk about wellness. What actually is wellness? We talk about health and wellness, and health and wellness in and of itself, there's a couple different parts of it. I can look at the difference, meaning that health is literally the state of our physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity or that kind of thing. Wellness, on the other hand, is a more active process. It's by which people look at what are the daily things they're doing to affect their health. We've had for generations, I mean, going back hundreds of generations, preventive and holistic health. It's been practiced, as far back as we can go. People are looking for what can they do to make their life better. Most of the time, it's a natural approach, a lot of self-healing. It's not passive or static. It does change, not maybe as constantly as we think, but incrementally. And as we take a look at some of these hot topics and trends, and I go back to the year 2000 and talk about some of the ones prior to that and some of the ones right after, we'll see that, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, okay. But essentially, from a wellness perspective, we're looking at choices, our intentions, and most importantly, our actions. So, wellness, it's more than our physical health. I mentioned that a minute ago. It's more than just the absence of any kind of disease, but it includes more than just physical health. It includes our mental health, our emotional, and our spiritual health. But it's actually broader in the big scheme of things. It includes our social and our environmental activities that we do. And some will even say our wellness is even our financial and occupational part of our lives, because they lead us to being able to make and do the things that we want to do. Now, if I look at what they call the medical paradigm, and I compare that to the wellness paradigm today, the medical paradigm is essentially to detect, correct, and treat, where the wellness paradigm, again, we're taking actions, but we're not detecting and correcting and treating. We want to take where we're at right now today. We want to improve where we're at, and we want to be able to prevent things from happening. So we're now into a more of a preventive mode more than a treating mode, more of an improving than correcting. Now, obviously, you correct something, you're improving it, but we want to improve it above that normal stage. So as I'm looking at wellness, it relates to, what do I intend to do? What actions am I taking? What are those activities, and how well do they relate to me as an individual with my existing level of health and my ability to go out and make changes? Well, we also have another term. It's called well-being. Well, we have wellness, we have health, we have well-being. Well, wellness and well-being have a slightly different connotation. The well-being is our perception of our health. The wellness is more our actual physical status at that time. Well-being tends to be more on the emotional and mental side, as opposed to the wellness being more on the physical. But our healthy lifestyle choices are really the wellness end of things, whereas the well-being tends to focus more on the satisfaction, our sense of fulfillment, that aspect of our overall healthy lifestyle. Okay, let me go back to around the year 2000, a little before, a little after. Leading up to 2000, the big millennial deal was the Y2K, or all the computers going to shut down. All sorts of things going on back then. So with regard to the records in the hospitals and everything going on, whether your watch was going to keep going, and just all sorts of things were centered around 2000, that being the year because there was some software program that didn't account for the change in the 1900 to the 2000 conversion. Lots of issues way back then. A lot of conflicting viewpoints also. If I look at the focus on carbs and fats back then, even in the existing literature, this isn't bad, this is bad. Well, this isn't bad. So you had a viewpoint that's saying, these are fine. And then another one over here, no, they're not. And so you kind of went back and forth as to, is this really a good thing to do? Yes or no? A lot of conflict in that. In fact, we also started seeing a lot of publications on the dangers of artificial sweeteners. There's one thing about having sugar, but now you give me something that's 1,000 times sweeter than sugar. What is that going to do to me? Is that really a toxin? Is it not a toxin? What's going to happen 20 years from now with me in this artificial sweetener business? Sitting is the new cancer was a slogan there just before 2020. There was a lot of concern. You probably even heard about people flying on airlines and sitting for such a long period of time. They had leg thrombosis issues and things. But sitting, is that a new cancer? I think they're using, not necessarily in the term cancer, but a cancer as a major health concern. You're not getting up, you're not moving around. And so sitting as a new cancer was a theme sort of infiltrated around the 2015, 2018 timeframe. And another thing we started seeing back there around 2000 was people wanting their desk to stand up. If they stand, they're going to be a whole lot better. I know that uh, I have used them very briefly, literally for a day or two, and it's not something I like. But there are a lot of people that have to stand. And if you're standing on a solid piece of concrete or whatever, it wears you out in a hurry. But if you have a rubber mat underneath, that cushioning really makes it a whole lot better. But if you're at a standing desk that you can change things around, move around a little bit, a lot of people swear by it. Uh, Again, it was a trend back then. We're seeing it. And there was also the trend of, well, I need to get away from what I'm doing right now, walk around, climb the stairs, physically get out of my area, get a clean mind, and start all over again. Now, the walking around the office may be literally a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It might be a short break where you walk out to the parking lot, turn around, come back in. But it was getting out of the headspace that you were in, physically being immersed in something that wasn't involved in your actual work at that time. When I look at what else was happening at that time, we started getting away from the older technology with exercise. If you were to go back into the pre 2000 era, you'd see a lot of the TV programs with the DVDs and the tapes and all sorts of things. And gradually the internet kind of really took full charge. And now instead of having our DVDs or exercise tapes, we now have apps. The apps that could go on a screen, but they ended up on our phone. And so now you have all sorts of things that you can do. If I want to know how to do breathing exercises, I pull it up on the internet and follow somebody doing a breathing exercise. If I want to know how to stretch, I can do that. If I want to know how to do any kind of exercise, I can pull it up and look at the actual exercise slowed down, somebody talking me through it in a nice slow manner. So the technology has changed during the last 20 years that phone apps now provide us with what we had to rely on a DVD recorder or some other mechanism or a TV set. Another part of the technology transfer that we've had is a Fitbit. I have a watch on right here that my daughter bought me for my birthday, and it tracks blood pressure and pulse and a few other things. And it's interesting. The part that I probably use it more than anything else is to track my sleeping patterns. I'm just going to talk about that here in just a second. But the Fitbits that are out there, they'll track your calories, they'll track your distance walked or run, they'll track a lot of things. When I'm out walking for an exercise, I have a phone app that tells me how far I went, how many calories I burned, did I increase or decrease in my altitude, lots of things that I think are very important. When my wife and I walked the Camino de Santiago about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was using it as part of the tracking mechanism as to what was going on, how far did I have to go. A lot of things with regard to tracking our calories, our distance, our progression along any kind of path. So GPS tracking has taken front seat in a lot of stuff as we've seen things from the year 2000. Sleeping pattern tracking. To me, I think that was a pretty important thing. Am I getting good quality sleep? Sleep is one of those things that I really need in order for my body to fully heal itself. And as I'm sleeping, that's where all the repairs and renovations occur. If I'm not getting good sleep, then my body's not ready to go the next day at 100%. But a lot of these trends that we're developing over that last 20 years, we're all set to focus on our having a closer eye on our own health. What is happening to me as an individual and what can I control? That was the whole focus. Uh, we used to have the term flat abs, and it's kind of evolved over time. We now you hear the term the stronger core. So if I'm doing core exercises, it's that center part of my body around my gut that I want a stronger core. Well, like I say, back in the 80s and 90s, it was having flat abs. It's a trend. It's a topic. It's still here. Really hasn't changed. In fact, what's the one where you do you put yourself down, your elbows in, and you go into, there's a word for it. I can't think of it just a second. I'll think of it. Anyway, it's a way of being able to exercise our core muscles to a really strong, fully developed core. And when you have good, strong core, then your everything's in alignment with each other. Planks, that's what I was trying to think of. So you get into a plank. Well, the world record, as at least a couple of years ago, world record for a plank was over 8 hours, being able just to get into a plank position and then just keep it that way. That seems almost impossible, but that's the world record for that one. We also started looking at fitness gaming. In other words, our games back then didn't focus on fitness per se. There was some games back there that maybe touched on a fitness issue or touched on a health issue, but then all of a sudden we had the Wii Fit or the Wii Sports, and you'd have bowling, and you'd have tennis, and you'd have racquetball, you'd have all sorts of things that you would have different pieces of equipment that would help you exercise your body, and in some cases show you a better way of being able to enhance a particular stroke to make your skill at a sport through a fitness game better. Another thing that's been changing over the last 20 years is that obesity. Well, we know that obesity started really coming into vogue, really starting to blossom in the late 70s. After that, people weren't sure what was causing it. And so I know if I diet, I can lose weight. Well, what's happening was that the obesity started forcing people to look at diets as a potential. I can exercise, but I'm not losing the weight. But if I'm eating and I can stop some of my eating process, maybe that'll give me more weight loss. So the obesity epidemic, which is still very prevalent today, forces a lot of people into diets. And if you take a look at the number of diets that were available in the late 90s versus the ones that are available today, some have withstood the entire time, still with us today. And there are plenty of new ones that, where'd this one come from? Or this is a brand new one. It's interesting how they tell you that this is a nutritional diet, yet many of these other ones are also nutritional. It's just that they had to have a different way of packaging it. The term foodies started coming into vogue. We started looking more at organic issues, vegan, non-GMO, genetically modified. The issues now started focusing on not just the food, but the deep down diving into the food issues that we eat. Okay, so let me bump up now to just a couple years ago, 2020. What's going on that is very recent, but maybe something you're aware of, but not necessarily been exposed to. Particularly with the pandemic, this thing has just really blossomed out. But starting in about 2020, just before the pandemic hit, the major focus was on telehealth. Let's do a video with your doctor. You don't have to leave your home. If most of the things can be done, you talk to your doctor privately. You can show them what you need to show them. If you need to come in or see somebody, that can be arranged. And then boom, all of a sudden, the pandemic, and you're restricted from doing a lot of things. And the telehealth business just took off like a rocket ship. So telehealth, beginning in the 2020s, has just blossomed. We would not necessarily hear the word plant-based very often prior to 2020, although it seems to be part of our lexicon today. It's hard to go anywhere and look at a menu and not see plant-based options for people, whether the plant-based option is a meat substitute, soy, or some other aspect. But we're seeing it in our stores, we're seeing it in our restaurants. And so the plant-based meals has become a trend, a focus, a topic that a lot of us are seeing. Some of us love it, won't let it go. Me personally, I'm not into plant-based protein. So, there are probably some good ones. I just like my steak, my meat, the way it is, not with being plant-based. But again, to each his own. We're starting to see a little bit of change in our sleep. We've always known that good quality sleep is what we need, but sometimes we got confused between being productive and being able to spend more time on what we need to get done versus what we call sleep deprivation. A little bit of deprivation is not going to hurt you. constant deprivation is going to be a major issue. People who work at nights have a totally different blood chemistry, blood health profile, because when they're sleeping in the daytime, it's a different environment. And it literally takes a long time to change your circadian rhythm from a normal based on the sunlight to when you're reversing everything and being able to close out the light in your room. And so the focus on sleep started becoming a trend. I don't want to have the sleep deprivation if it's going to cost me my productivity. And so here, just in the last couple, 3 years, the business owners and health experts are saying, I really and truly need more focus on getting good quality sleep. And we're going to touch a little bit more about that in the workplace here very, very quickly. Another one that started working out was that with my apps, I can do a lot of my home workouts, a lot of my workouts, my fitness routines at home. And so a big shift in canceling gym memberships happened. I think that also occurred because of the COVID, but you had a kind of I can't go to the gym, it's closed. Let me start doing what I can do at home. And just like not showing up at work, I can do my work by Zoom or some other methodology via video, or just working in a house and calling it in. We've changed our whole work life. Networking prior to COVID was you'd show up, there'd be 20, 30, 40 people there. You'd shake hands, you talk about what you do. Then all of a sudden, can't go out, can't shake hands. You got to do this, 6 feet, masks, everything. Well, that same mentality is still bleeding over today. People want to work from home. They're no longer wanting to drive and get to work. Well, that same approach in the fitness world, where I'd go to the gym and spend a couple hours. Well, the gym's off limits, so let me do it at home. A lot more attention on mental health in the last couple, 3 years than in the previous 20. And I think a lot of it's just the fact that from an awareness perspective, they're starting to see the impact of that mental health issue, whether it's anxiety, depression, or something a little bit worse than that, what it has on the workforce. So there is a definite shift where mental health is at least being talked about, and in some cases actually being treated. If I look at 2023, what's going on? In each of these, I plan on taking a little bit deeper dive. I just want to bring this in as an overview from the perspective of what's happening. Well, if I compare self-care, what am I spending my money on to take care of myself? Well, baby boomers spend a certain amount of money, but if I compare that to what millennials spend literally twice as much money on self-care as baby boomers. Now, you would think that baby boomers might spend more, they might have more money, they might have a whole lot more health issues, but for whatever reason, millennials, at least in tracking the dollars being spent on self-care, millennials are definitely the marketplace that you want to put that kind of product and service. We also look at what kinds of habits, products, and services do we use to achieve that well-being, that sense of having satisfactory health, or even better than satisfactory health. We're now looking at the wellness and the well-being and the things that we can spend money on to get there. It might be a coach, it might be a half a dozen other things, but one of those things is what they call meditation apps. If you looked at 10 years ago, yeah, there was some out there. There was a few, some good ones. But the money being spent and the quantity of meditation apps is just exponentially increasing over year after year after year. You go back 5 years, you go back 10 years, and the amount of dollars being spent on these applications that you can put on your phone and go through deep breathing exercises, pranayamas, whatever it may happen to be, where you can get focused on being able to manage stress. The amount is exorbitant nowadays compared to even just 5 years ago. Skincare. You wouldn't think about that, but there's been a 99+% increase in the skincare focus with regard to health topics and trends. We know that there's a lot of toxins in skincare. We know there's a lot of issues there with that. But just in the last 5 years, a major focus is I want something healthy to put on my skin. What can I choose? And so there's a more awareness, more education that's causing, especially millennials more so than anyone else, to be very, very selective in what they choose to put on their skin. CBD products legalized in 2018, and it's used almost in 30% of all households. It's a product that's come along, and in some cases, a very, very good product. I have seen remarkable results with it. Our body actually makes a almost a CBD like molecule. Palmitoyl ethanolamide is a molecule our bodies make. As we get older, we make less and less. But if you hold the two of them up together, one's almost a mirror image of the CBD. If you want more information on palmitoyl ethanolamide, go to Google and type in PEA pain control, for instance, or just PEA products. But PEA is your palmitoyl ethanolamide. And it's literally a CBD kind of molecule in our bodies, and we make it. It's just that as we get older, we make less and less, and it's very good for neuropathic pain. So it's something you can buy over the counter and take just as you would for an aspirin or Tylenol. Sleep. This is a really super important topic and trend for 2023. All of a sudden, literally all of a sudden, it's been all of a sudden for 20 years, but for 2023, it seems to be a more emphasis, more focus, it's more important to people. They have linked sleep deprivation to a number of different diseases, obesity, diabetes, depression. Those are ones that are the common ones. There are other ones out there, but sleep deprivation definitely will take its toll. And there's no doubt about it that you do need your sleep. Now, can you go a couple of days without it? You can. My personal time way back in college, I was working here, there, and yonder 24 hours a day. I stayed awake 166 hours in a row, and I was driving to school, working at night, two different jobs. I'd leave one job around midnight and drive to the post office and unload trucks for Christmas packaging. And then as soon as I'd leave the post office in the morning, run home, change clothes, take a shower, head out to school, and you're going and coming. But yes, I could tell you that I have no idea if I went through that town this morning going to school or even going home. You're on automatic pilot. I was very fortunate; nothing ever happened. I know a lot of times in the military, you end up with situations where sleep deprivation becomes the main way of doing things because you have no other choice. But when you have choices, the sleep deprivation is a major way to control many aspects of disease. Let your body repair itself, do the necessary functions it needs to do on a nightly basis. Some companies, I think they set up to, so it's 300 companies that they surveyed. They were finding that companies were now putting in what they call power nap pods. And when I looked at it, it was basically like a dentist chair, except that it had this big thing that came over the top and I guess essentially canceled out all light and probably canceled out a lot of the sounds that came in. So if you could go in there and tap in a 10-minute window or 15-minute window and take a nap, great. There are some cultures that allow a brief nap at work. You take a look at some of the other cultures we have around the world where it's not uncommon to have a 2 or 3 hour siesta in the afternoon. And then, of course, you eat later at night. But what we're also seeing is the apps that are there for fitness and other things are also there for our sleep. We now have apps that will allow us to track the sleep quality that we're getting every single night. And that's super critical because that is something that is to some level controllable. If you're going to eat late at night, the quality of your sleep is not going to be good. If you're going to drink late at night, the quality of your sleep is not going to be as good. So if you're going to drink, try to make at least a 3 or 4 hour window between you stop eating, stop drinking, and you actually go to bed. If you're going to be watching your cell phone and doing a lot of stuff, try to make at least an hour to get that white light that's been focused on our bodies by watching our phone or our computers away from us, so we have a chance to gradually fall asleep. A lot of things interrupt that, and what we can control makes our lives a whole lot better. We have obesity still with us. Ultra processed foods in the 1976, 77, when it first started coming out, is probably the beginning of the obesity epidemic that we're seeing start in the United States and kind of went worldwide. But because there's disease associated with obesity and other things, just like with sleep deprivation, a lot of our focus today is on losing weight. And so we see that almost 20%, and this is Americans, but nearly 20% of Americans have seen an increase in dieting and fasting. There's just so many diets out there. Well, I don't like that diet. Let me try this one. The biggest problem with diets is we don't understand why some are good and some are bad. Now, on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, we have a show called Food and Our Emotions, and we've been going through a lot of different diets over the last several weeks as to, what are the thumbs up, what are the thumbs down with regard to various diets. In most cases, they're pretty good, but in some cases, they're not, and you need to know why. One of the ones we think about all the time, ketogenic. But in a ketogenic diet, yes, it's good. You're losing fat, you're burning fat, but it's also keeping your body in a very acidic pH, which leads down the road to bone loss because the calcium is going back into the bloodstream from your bones in order to maintain a pH of around 7.4. But your body's pH is a lot less than that, and you're not replenishing it. But they don't tell you that in the books. I learned the hard way from being on Atkins for about 6 years, and when I finally did a bone density test, I found out I was osteopenia, and it just surprised me after literally decades of weightlifting and running that I had anywhere near a problem with bone density. The most popular diet today, 2023, is intermittent fasting, believe it or not. A lot of people are seeing benefit. You can actually eat the exact same calories per day, but separate the distance and time between eating them. If I eat the same calories, the exact same food, but I cram it into a 4 or 6 hour window, I will actually lose weight compared to having it spread out over a 10-hour window during the daytime from morning to night. Why? Because I'm changing my body's energy source from a blood glucose energy to a ketone energy, and I'm actually burning fat because I'm allowing my fasting to lengthen that time in between meals. The fasting apps have increased over 300% in the last 10 years. It's amazing what's out there that can help you. We're starting to see also a change in perspective. Water used to be pretty healthy, still is. Again, good, clean, purified water. But tea, because of a lot of the health benefits associated with the catechins, myself, there's 6 teas, some days 7 when I can find the right kind, but there's 6 teas I blend together and have on a single basis. I have the black, white, and green. I have the oolong, I have the pu'er, I have gynostemma, and when I can find it, the pochong. But I put all these teas together. They have some aspect dealing with health, some aspect dealing with longevity, and I think they're just a really, really good thing to have. But the focus nowadays in 2023 is I'd rather have a good tea and substitute it for my water. And we've seen this increase in the attention to having tea more than water incrementally increase over the last 10 years. Something I'd never heard of before I started doing the research on today's program was a thing called the skin fast. Well, what's a skin fast? That's a fast just like you would stop eating, except people stop putting lotions and any kind of other skin treatments on their skin. In other words, they know there's toxins in there. They know there's issues. I use coconut oil as an underarm deodorant. I'll use it also on my head. But coconut oil is a very, very good thing to use. But when you start putting other kinds of skin treatments on willy-nilly, there are issues there that occur. And from the perspective of, why don't I just take a fast? I'll take 2 days off. I won't put anything on. So it may become my weekend. I just go without any kind of makeup, any kind of just au naturel, so to speak. So skin fast or something that's a new trend. I had not heard about that literally until I was doing my research for today's show. Also started having a thing called a dopamine fast. Let's take extra energy that's being focused at us on an extra day and remove it from our lifestyle. Let's kind of calm back down to nature. Let's focus on relaxation. So if I can fast from putting stuff on my skin, I can fast from the kinds of activities that I'm doing. I just, rather than go out and play racquetball, I need a day off. I need 2 days off, whatever it may happen to be. Running, let's minimize some of that where I can get back to just being me. We're also seeing that same mindset applied to screen, your iPhones, social media, where I don't need that level of intensity going to my brain. Let me fast for it for a while. I need to return to some level of natural balance. And it allows us literally to focus better on our lives. And so those are the things that we're looking at there. We're also seeing in 2023 an increased use of what they call medial robots. These are robot assisted surgeries, and they're much more common today than they were 5 years ago. Today, maybe 2% that's actually in use in surgeries. They're actually using them where you could be in Los Angeles and operating on somebody in Boston. It's that pervasive. It's not the common one, but it can be done. You're also seeing an increased use of what they call exoskeleton usage. In other words, you have this little suit that can be attached to you. You don't have the ability on your own to get up and walk, but as part of a rehab program, this exoskeleton allows you to use the muscles that you would normally use for rehab, but you can't right now because your skeleton can't support it. So you now have an exoskeleton that does. They have a similar thing. It's called an end effector, and it localizes. So in other words, of actually moving as a total skeleton, a total person, you're actually using the same skeletal process, but for localized rehab. Another thing they're using is they'll send robots in with UV ultraviolet lights to sanitize areas. Let's say they finish in a surgical room or you're leaving a hospital bed area. A robot can come in there and literally use the UV lights to kill bacteria and everything else that's literally in there. So we're seeing a major increase in 2023 on mental health. Nearly a 20%, what they think 20% of Americans have some level of mental health that they suffer from. 30% total when you add that in. It's depression, anxiety. We talked about a lot of depression and anxiety is really a B1, B3. Vitamin deficiency increases the level of depression and anxiety. But with the pandemic, there's probably been maybe a 30% increase in what clinical depression and anxiety. And from a post-pandemic focus, our workplaces, our companies are seeing this is an issue. We need to do something about it. Not only is it an issue in the workplace, but they're also looking at mental health and shifting from the adult version to what about our kids? What about our teenagers? That's something that's a big, big focus today. Now, I look at these kind of programs that we put on a weekly basis on the USA Global TV and radio and on the E360 TV network. You can find the Talking Heads archive on YouTube. Go to the playlist, go to Talking Heads, go to my name, Red O'Loughlin. And we talked about heart health and nutrition and toxins. We talked about brain health, cancer, fat management, even artificial intelligence, longevity, lifestyle. We just finished a section on pain management. Lots and lots and lots of things there. So if you like this kind of presentation where you have slides that can pop up, you can stop the presentation, make some notes, even print it out if you want. It gives you a chance to increase your awareness, increase the level of education you have on something. But more importantly to me is it provides you a level of understanding that you can go to your doctor or your pharmacist or your nutritionist and say, hey, doc, what about this? And I think that's a major improvement in where we were even 5 years ago. My books that I have out there right now, they're available on Amazon and on my website. No matter what, you can do it. Really addresses the issues of the subconscious mind. What happens in your brain that controls 95% of everything you do on a daily basis? What can you do to talk directly to your subconscious mind? What can you do to talk to your conscious mind? The age of joyless, the joy of ageless health discusses disease starting at the cellular level. What causes it? Your stress, your toxins, your radiation, your inflammation, your infection, your diet, even your expectations. They all have an effect at the cellular level when you have chronic low-level cellular inflammation. Left unchecked, it becomes oxidative stress. Left unchecked, now you start having some mutational issues and health problems. So talk about that in that particular book. Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging covers the two primary causes of aging, your DNA telomere at the end of your DNA, the erosion of that every time the telomere split, every time the DNA splits, and your human growth hormone. And I talk about how you can speed up or slow down the aging process. Understanding the Alzheimer's disease, that's one where I had written over 40 articles on Alzheimer's, the latest studies on it, what's going on, and I compiled that all into one book. That was released earlier this year. Another book I released this year is the Essential New Author's Guide. And for those people who are thinking about writing a book, this basically says, how can I write and publish my book for free? These are all available on my website or on Amazon. So with that, I'm getting ready to turn it back over to the USA Global TV and Radio Network and into the E360 TV network. And I'll catch you all next week, more on hot topics and trends for 2023 on wellness. Bye now.